Jon Macaskill and Will Schneider, hosts of the Men Talking Mindfulness podcast. Welcome to the Fieldswell Podcast.
Thanks, Lauren. Super happy to be here. It's been a long time coming. I know we talked about it months ago, had it scheduled months ago, and now we're making it happen. So excited to be here.
Thank you for coming on. I said to Will, welcome to the party.
Yeah, well, it's good to be here, Lauren. Thank you. It's just, to echo John's sentiments. Great to see you. Great to be part of your show. And let's fucking start this party. Yeah,
we're ready to talk mindfulness. So your show has gained a lot of traction, and mindfulness is becoming increasingly relevant. For me, it's no longer like an optional part of my life, but it's an essential part of my daily routine. So to give our listeners some background, what led you to start Men Talking Mindfulness, or MTM?
Yeah, well, Will and I were introduced by a mutual friend. Will had, I believe, led a retreat in, where was it, Peru? Will?
No, we were in not the Bahamas. Where was I? Where's the triangle? Where's the
Bermuda Triangle.
The Bermuda Triangle. Yeah. It's Bermuda. Yeah, the Bermuda. I was thinking Bahamas. Yeah. It was so long ago. Yeah, I was part of a retreat. But go ahead, John.
So part of a retreat with a mutual friend. He's this mutual friend is a military guy, or now I believe former military, and we were both in the military. Not Will and myself, but this mutual friend.
Okay.
And I had gotten into meditation to address my own mental health challenges, but also simultaneously improve mental performance, mental clarity, these types of things. And I was talking to this guy about that, and he said, "You need to meet this guy, Will." And so we had a phone call, and this is back in 2019. And so I got to correct myself, Lauren, when you asked how long this has been going before you hit record. We just wrapped up our 5th year.
Okay.
And we're heading into our 6th year,
Wow.
which is just insane to think about.
Yeah.
But back in 2019, Will and I had, maybe a 30-minute, maybe an hour-long phone call. And at the end of that phone call, Will was like, "Okay, when's our next phone call?" You know how you do these networking phone calls, and so many of them are great, but then they don't go anywhere. Well, at the end of every phone call for like several months, Will would be like, "Okay, when's our next phone call?" And these phone calls were, talking about insights that we had gained through our meditation practices, our mindfulness ways of living, and challenges that we had, these types of things. And we hit it off. And then the pandemic hit, early 2020. And I looked at Will's Instagram, and I saw Will, and I'm sure he'll touch on this, but Will is a yoga teacher and instructor, and he had taken his in-person work because of the pandemic, and he had taken on an Instagram Live. I was like, "Hey man, what's going on with this Instagram Live? Let's talk about it. Maybe we can do something together on Instagram Live." And that's actually where Men Talking Mindfulness started, was an Instagram Live show where it was just the two of us talking on our phones, and I'm holding up a wrench for some reason because it was there. It's the closest thing I had. And anyway, so we're chatting, and we had like 6 people viewing, right? And then maybe crept up for like 12 or something. And then we figured out how to rip those Instagram Lives off of Instagram and use the audio to start a podcast. We're like, well, maybe we can turn this into a podcast. And man, those first few episodes in podcast form are rough. If you ever go back and listen to Men Talking Mindfulness,
what?
Yeah.
I think I listened to one where you were, Will maybe was in the Grand Central train station.
Yeah, I was outside. Exactly. Yeah. Wearing a fucking mask.
And we did one where I was inside my RV, and my dog ran in, and then my family ran in. There was all sorts of special cameos. But we've definitely gotten more professional since then, gotten professional mics, got, a production team, and we've come an incredibly long way, both logistically and just in our depth. I think Will and I have grown not just as podcasters, but as men, as mindfulness and meditation practitioners and teachers. I mean, it's just been an incredible journey, and we look forward to seeing, this past 5 years has been wild. We look forward to seeing where the next 5, 10, 15 years take us.
Amazing. Yeah. Hey, you have to start somewhere, and sticking with it. Look at what you've created now. I'm so honored to have you on the show.
Yeah, we're excited. We just last week went from being in the top 2.5% globally to into the top 2%,
Wow.
which is, we've been sitting at the top 2.5% for like 3 years.
Mhm.
Finally broke into that top 2%.
Wow.
And we're listed as one of the top mindfulness podcasts out there by iHeartRadio. So we're super
Incredible.
excited.
Hats off
Yeah.
to you.
Thank you.
Let's get into it. So were
Yeah.
you both always mindful men? Oftentimes I have found like it's when we hit our struggles or go through a really difficult time that we kind of tune into becoming more mindful and taking better care of ourselves. Give us a little background on each of you and how you kind of started to get into mindfulness originally.
I was just really needed to manage my anxiety. Like I have, I moved to New York City, to be an actor. Like I totally made like a fucking pivot 180, from where I thought I was going, where I was expected to go, back in like, it started around in 2000 and I made the big shift in 2003, it was just an incredible shift. And really to, bare your soul on stage or like get into an audition, to be on camera, to be like, to be viewed. Oh God, it's really challenging. And, I don't even know how, like, or why, I decided to look in the direction of meditation. I don't remember what that was. I mean, this was like 2007 is when I started meditating. And, so this brought me into this path of self-development, of wellness, of going within, because I just knew there was something in there, and that led me to yoga. And I've been teaching yoga. I got first certified in 2009 and I started teaching right then. I just really enjoyed teaching. I remember my very first experience observing a class. Like when you go for your yoga certification, part of your 200 hours of training, you must put like 10 hours of observation, just watching and looking at a class.
Yeah.
And I remember observing my first class, and it was a packed class here in New York City, and everyone's resting in the final pose called Shavasana. Most classes end in like this resting pose where you just corpse pose, just literally just playing dead on the floor. And everybody, after like that hour long, experience moving their body and breathing and like going through this flow sequence, just really found an incredible state of peace. Like almost everyone in the room. And I just like, I broke down. Like I had this moment of like, oh my God, like I cried a little bit. And it just pulled me forward. It just like, I need to do more of this and bring more of this to people. And like, I've really enjoyed teaching a lot of yoga here in the city. I knew it was kind of coming to, I felt it on the inside. Like, this is not the end game for me. I don't want to just be teaching yoga, which is great practice, but I felt as limited in like really what I wanted to communicate as I've gone deeper inside with like meditation, with yoga, with journaling, with all the wonderful things that you find along the path of self-discovery. And then, literally I just got a phone call with Jon in like May or June of 2019, and we just haven't stopped talking. I mean, it's just like, it's like, I think Jon too, in some ways, just the passion for it led me forward. And here we are having a conversation about that.
Right. It's like one thing leads to another.
Exactly. But you got it. Like you got to listen. You got to stay calm. You got to trust. You got to go within, like practice every day a little bit, just to kind of like, stay connected to that inner voice and that inner passion and inner fire. And here we are. And I couldn't be happier, and proud as well of myself, what we've created, because it could be a motherfucker, and it can, like, in a million times it'll try to throw you out, especially the city. It's like, but that self-belief from these practices just gets stronger and stronger. And here are the fruits of our labor.
Similar to you, before we go over to Jon's story.
Yeah.
I think we both took our yoga teacher training at Yoga Works in Soho.
Oh,
Is that
yoga.
where you took
Oh my
yours?
God. No, I did mine yoga to the people.
Oh, yoga to the people.
Before that collapsed, thankfully.
So you talking about Shavasana, that is how I eventually like entered my meditative practice.
Right.
Because I was so calm and still in my Shavasana after yoga and moving my body. And that's really how I found balance living in New York City, which, as we all know, can be super chaotic.
Yeah, all the time chaos. But I think that's why the studios are packed. But Yeah, it's been quite a journey. Quite a journey.
Yeah, and on my side, I'm not a yoga teacher, but I have practiced, and I will tell you I've had some similar experiences to what Will mentioned there in the Shavasana. Like I was crying. I was like, "What is happening?"
Yeah, exactly.
But I will also say, I have not always been a mindful man. As a matter of fact, I've been the antithesis of that. There have been times when all I've thought about is the future. Like, what can I do to better my future? And once I arrived at that, I'm like, okay, now what can I do? What can I do? That, or I was thinking about the past, kind of ruminating about the past. Hey, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have said that. Mistakes that I'd made. I was living everywhere except the present moment, which is, the three of us know that's mindfulness, is living in that present moment, right?
Yeah.
So backing up a little bit, I was in the Navy SEAL teams for 17 years, in the Navy for 24 years, and in 2005, I was involved in an operation that went horribly sideways and lost a lot of good men on that operation. And that operation caused a lot of survivor's guilt for me, moral injury for me. Why wasn't I out there? Because funny enough, I was involved in the operation, but I was sitting back in the rear on the radios and computers while my guys were out there fighting. And so I didn't feel that I had the control that I needed to have. I didn't have an opportunity to help. And so I dealt with that anxiety, that depression, that stress, the moral injury by self-medicating with alcohol. And I abused some prescription medication and got into a very dark spot. And, about a decade after that operation in 2005, I went to go see a counselor because I was so down in the dumps. And he recommended mindfulness and meditation to me. And just to keep a long story short, initially I didn't buy in because I thought I was this badass operator, and I kind of envisioned mindfulness and meditation for the hippies and the weirdos. For
someone like me,
for someone like Will, right?
Thanks, John. Thanks, John.
And then and then he convinced me to try it out to enhance my performance. And at that point, I bought in and I tried it. The initial meditation didn't go well. But after some time with some consistent effort, it started to make some changes in how I did perform, but ultimately it also made changes to how I felt and how I showed up in this world. And I attribute mindfulness and meditation to not only changing my life, but also saving it.
Wow.
So it has become a big time part of my life. I mean, huge, not only in my profession, but in my practice. I practice daily, different amount of times and different times a day. I've got 3 young kids, and God bless them, I love them, but they also give me plenty of reason to practice mindfulness and meditation. I would not say I've always been a mindful man, but now I am 100% bought in.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for sharing your story with us. I think we can get so caught up in fearing the future, regretting the past, the anxiety, the depression. So often are given medication from the doctors, and they never check in with like, how's your mental health? What's going on up here? And what's your mindfulness practice? And to me, that's like number one, taking a holistic approach to healing. And the thing is, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight.
No.
And so what do you think the modern man or woman struggles with the most, and how can developing a mindfulness practice ultimately come to change their lives?
Yeah, what we're seeing, there's a lot of things. I think one of the things that we're seeing just from all the shows we produced and the content we're putting out there and the metrics that we have now is like there's a lot of people that I feel are not on their right path, their path. Right. And we're seeing that with like episodes like Find Your Purpose, which has been always ranking very high for us. And I think, I know personally, because I was not on my own path until I had this, massive, like literally worldview shattering event in my life, just I went through a breakup. It was fucking devastating. I didn't know who I was, what I was doing, why the fuck I was doing anything that I was doing. And then I started to dig in, and I started to, did some inner work with some guidance of Julia Cameron and the Artist Way. And then I put a foot on my own path, and I just started to move forward. And, it's not like the path is easy. I'm still on the path. I'm still discovering, I'm still practicing. But I wake up every day and looking in the mirror, it's like, yeah, I'm running my life. I'm doing my own thing. You know what I mean? And that's very satisfying for me, where, if you were to do a survey, I bet like 90% of the people out there in the US, I'd say, are not doing that, probably even more. And I feel that leads to a lot of bad habits. That leads to a lot of stress and anxiety, which leads to numbing, whether it's with drinking, with purchase, like just buying a bunch of shit you don't need, drugs, all the things that, I think I'm sure you can recognize, or you can probably identify with it if you're listening right now, like to what those things are. But things really started to shift as soon as I started to put myself first instead of what everyone else was expecting me to be. And like I said, it's not an easy path. But now I have practices to support myself in those times that are difficult. I also have a network now that I can go to that's not just going to tell me like, shut up and go back to work. They're going to actually maybe ask me some questions or just hold space for me so I can move through whatever particular, whatever is going on in my life at that time, look at it in a way that I can learn from it and move forward. So it just feel like that's the big thing. If you're not living your passion, your purpose, who you want to be, I think it's difficult, and that just that's what triggers all the other problems that of stress and anxiety.
And let's get into more on how our listeners can start to put themselves first.
Yeah.
And I think it's like a mindset shift of being like a victim mindset to a visionary mindset, starting to look at this vision for your future and starting to instill daily practices that help you become a person who can achieve that future and go after it. So what are some of the mindfulness routines maybe that you practice or that our listeners could start doing to kind of get more on track to put themselves first?
Yeah. Well, I think to put yourself first, you have to know yourself. And like Will just said, you have to step onto your path. But so many people are stepping onto paths that maybe their parents expected, maybe what society expects. Maybe they're stepping onto a path where they believe they're going to make the most money or whatever it is that you're chasing, right? And they're not living authentically. And because they're not living authentically, they don't know themselves. And I think some of the work that you have to do is just sitting quietly, spending time by yourself, maybe not meditation per se, but just being by yourself, journaling, writing down your own personal goals and aspirations, doing some of that deep, uncomfortable, introspective work. Maybe in addition to your goals and aspirations, write down your fears, write down things that make you anxious. And then maybe in reading this journal and in spending that time by yourself, you can get into some of the, the common quote unquote meditation or mindfulness practices, some of the breath work, and you see how that breath work can change how you feel in your body, in your skin, in that moment. Then you can get into some of the more in-depth meditations, some of the self-compassion meditations. A lot of us, Will and I just did an interview with Dr. Frank Anderson, and we have, I would say, I said a lot of us, I will now change that and say all of us have this inner critic in our minds. And to sit quietly with that inner critic and wonder, where's that inner critic come from? What am I doing in this life because of that inner critic? What is that inner critic scaring me into doing? What's it scaring me out of not doing? I think that can come with the self-compassion practices or the meditations. I think those are things that you need to do in order to start to really get on a path towards self-discovery, if you will.
Yeah. So helpful. Thank you. Know thyself. I like to say look in the mirror. You're with the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with.
Yes.
So prioritize that relationship.
Great point.
I love that.
I'll add to what John is saying, and you're so right. I mean, it's like, I think I think sometimes meditation could be very intimidating for people, and people just hear the word meditation and there's like, it's all wrapped up in all sorts of like misconceptions and a bunch of bullshit that isn't even fucking true. You know what I mean? Or it's religious, or it's just frustrating, because I feel like as a teacher, you know, and as someone, I'm always fighting against that narrative, and but maybe if you're kind of wrapped up in that whole conversation, that's never for me because I just heard about it and it sounds like horrible, right? You'll get there eventually if it's in this lifetime. But I think it's like to just even before you even take the step on the path, it's like coming into that self-care. It's like, what do you love to do? Like actually you love to do, and keep doing that without looking, expecting results, doing it from the pure joy, the pure enthusiasm, the pure expression, whatever that is. And I'm not talking about like indulging in something, right, that's not helpful. Something that like really comes from not your mind, right, but something that comes from deep in your heart, deep in your spirit. And if you keep replicating that, that is just you begin to create a connection from your heart into your mind, right? And that's going to lead you to other places. And just working from that place of love, right, and passion, all of a sudden it's just like, wait, what about this? What about this? And then all of a sudden you're taking that first step into something that is really meaningful to you, that could really, or at least you're moving somewhere instead of just staying stuck in neutral, you know, and questioning, you know, who I am.
You know, two things that come to mind are like authenticity and vulnerability. People
100%.
are afraid to be who they really are because they're scared of what other people think. And I said, what's scarier? Not ever getting to be like waking up one day and realize I've lived this whole life with a mask on, or what someone else may think of who you really are, because you're going to attract your people when you actually start to be authentically you.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Authenticity
100%.
has like, they kind of measured, or I saw they ranked like a bunch, or they measured like 15 of the most common emotions, and authenticity was by far the fucking highest one.
Yes.
Like by far. I mean, so if you start there, right. And you know, even the small act of authenticity, it just lead you more forward, because again, it has such a wonderful frequency. You'll just begin to bring things to you.
Yeah. One thing I love about your show is that it encourages men to be more vulnerable and talk about their feelings. And like, I think that's so healthy. So often when I go to some of these, there's this workout called The Class, and it's like a cathartic mind, body, soul workout. It's often only women. And I'm like, where are the men at? Like, you know, we're women dancing, crying, screaming, getting it all out. What do men have to do this? And I think it's what you're shedding light on your show is like, let's have these conversations about what's going on in here.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Men are, I think, again, the societal constructs and the societal expectations, what we've been taught since a very young age is not to be vulnerable, is to be strong, right? And the irony is that being vulnerable is being strong, right? Now we know that, but you know, Will and I were just talking again on the previous episode how parents can tell young boys, don't cry, you know, suck it up, you know, toughen up, these kinds of things. And I think most parents are saying it with the best of intentions. They're not meaning for, you know, this to be somewhat traumatic to that young boy, but it is ingraining in that young boy that vulnerability is weak, that femininity is weak. And when I say the feminine side, men can have that feminine side, and it is a strength. There's the yin and the yang, right? And our expressing that feminine side is not a sign of weakness. As a matter of fact, I believe it's a sign of strength. But yeah, the what do we have? There are men's groups out there. There's shows like ours, but you have to be intentional to seek it out. And again, society is like, okay, well, men need to watch football and beat their chests. And if they're going to get together, what are they going to talk about? They're going to talk about the national championship on Monday night, right? Which, you know, that's not bad. That's I like talking about sports. I'm not a huge sports fan, but I like talking about it every so often. especially when Army plays Navy, and and Navy wins. But that's another whole topic. But yeah, the idea that a man can talk to another man about being hurt or feeling sad, right? That's kind of verboten, if you will. But it's becoming more and more accepted and more well known that there are benefits from it. Men getting together with other men to share what it is they're experiencing. And I'm sure men, Will, you've probably seen an uptick of men in your classes. Lauren, 100%. You've probably seen some growth there. And it's a new era that's being opened, and it's exciting.
Yeah. I feel like this I just graduated my psychology master's program.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful I have that knowledge, because I feel like it's totally missed in the general education system. In high schools, you're not taught about mindset principles or mindfulness, or like how our thoughts influence our reality. And so you reach like an adversity or difficult situation in life and you spiral and you get stuck and you don't know how to come back up, because you're not really taught that. You think, oh, I graduate high school or college, I get a job, I get married, and then like that's just, you think when we're younger that your parents have it all figured out.
Oh yeah.
And that once you get that age, you'll have it all figured out. But like that's just not how it works. And so mindfulness is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's like the people that are teaching like, oh, vulnerabilities, is for the weak or whatever, or teaching, it's just like, oh, I mean, the training, the education I received as a kid, or as far as my life lessons, just like find something you want to do, work there for 25 years, retire, and then start your fucking life. I'm like, what? And but who am I learning from? I'm learning from people that don't have access to vulnerability. They don't have the courage to even be vulnerable. They don't have the courage to step on their own path. They don't have the courage to ask the questions to find their passion. And it's like, but we're so incredibly influenced by the people around us. What, like they say, like you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's true, right? And that goes for your family. I love my family dearly. I think family is obviously very important, but like who is around you that's influencing your energy, your thoughts, your feelings, who is questioning in a way that helps to move you forward versus instead of trying to keep you in the same box that they're in.
Yes.
Like there's a lot.
Who am I? What do I want? And what may be holding me back?
Yeah. Right. And where do I need to go, and who would I need to talk to get there? It's like, there's
so helpful. So if you could give one piece of advice, maybe to someone who isn't familiar with mindfulness, maybe they're hesitant about developing a mindfulness practice, what would it be?
I would say start simple and stay consistent. I guess that's 2 pieces of advice, but they're really one and the same. Trying to jump into the deep end too fast, you're going to get discouraged. And then much like, the New Year's resolutions, you get people going into the gym for 2 hours the first day, and then they cut it down to 30 minutes the next day, and then they don't go the third day.
Yeah.
If you try to jump into an hour-long meditation day one, you may come out of that very frustrated. So, start with some simple breath work and then stay consistent with that for a while and see the changes. And from there, jump into something more, a little bit, something more elaborate, if you will, maybe more in depth. But consistency and start simple.
Stick with it. So as we wrap up, I was going to ask what step they could take today, like one thing they could do to add more mindfulness into their lives. Well, John, you kind of said breath work is where you would maybe recommend. Will, what would you recommend?
I think that's good. What I was going to add, I think that's a great place to start. Like if you really just want to receive numerous benefits on the physical realm, on the mental realm, in just how you are in the world, and breath work's the way to go. Because breathing is going to help you to focus, which is going to sharpen your mind, which is going to help you, at least get some ease from the thoughts, right? Physiologically, it's going to help to relax your stress and anxiety so you can actually see things more clearly. And it doesn't even take that long. And consistency is super key, right? And that's what really makes it a practice. And that's what makes it really rewarding for people. Is just starting with just even 5 minutes, doing it every day, and just staying with that. Like, let that be, just do that for a month. is what I'll say. And then just see, and just notice notice also, do it, and then watch what happens in 3 days, 5 days, 3 weeks. Like what happens, how the world has changed just because you've found your breath.
And I mean, to take it a step further, how do we do that? I know of box breathing, where you breathe in for 3, hold for 3, out for 3, and I enjoy that. But what are some breathwork exercises for our listeners?
I would even, like, what I do in class just to start class is just like, like an 8-second breath in for 4, out for 4, just nice and slow. I mean, it's going to take time. Even you think it's like, oh, I'm just breathing. There's so many incredible mechanics that go into the breath that you need to discover as the person, as the breather. Like, it just, like, to even just get a deep breath could take weeks, because a lot of people are only breathing in through their chest, which is only exacerbating the fight or flight freeze and the anxiety and the cortisol and all that stuff that comes along with it, right? Just even to get the breath down deep, and then even to control the breath instead of like trying. I see a lot of people when they breathe, like take a deep breath in, like, right, and the shoulders are going, their face is going, it's like, no. I mean, just even to release, trying to do really almost nothing, and release anything in breathing is going to take some time. And just doing that and trying to create a deep flow, smooth flow, a consistent flow of like 4 in and 4 out, like just do that is going to be a heck of a lot of work. Frustration is going to come up. You're going to see yourself in a different way. You're going to be having another conversation with yourself. Like it's just a practice like anything else, but just simple, smooth, deep, 4 in, 4 out. Watch what happens. Send us a message, let you know how it goes. We can help you.
Yes.
That's where I would start, Lauren.
Are there episodes on your podcast? Tell our listeners what they can look forward to enjoying when they go visit the Men Talking Mindfulness podcast.
Oh my goodness. Well, just about every episode, we actually do a practice. We started getting into shorter practices in the recent seasons, but we were doing 2, 3, 4 minute practices at the beginning of the episode, and then another one at the end, so they can try that out. But we've had mindfulness teachers and practitioners come in. We've had leadership experts. We've had health and wellness coming in to talk about how what you eat affects your mental health, about how much water you take in, how that affects your mental health. We had trauma experts coming on to talk about, how to recover from trauma and work through that continually in life. So we envision kind of mindfulness as this really big capsule, and there's a lot of aspects to that. And we feel that if you tap into the show, you're going to get benefits. You're going to get benefits personally. You're going to get benefits physically, mentally, professionally. So we really would love you to tune in to Men Talking Mindfulness. Yeah,
we've had New York Times bestsellers on. Like we've had more coming up this season. It's really, really exciting.
We've got George Mumford coming on. George Mumford taught Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant mindfulness and meditation.
Let's go.
So we have another New York Times bestseller, Wild at Heart. John Eldridge is coming on.
John Eldridge,
classic book. It's been quite a ride. But there's quite a wonderful variety, because there's so much packed in the mindfulness, and we try to unpack all of it, because it's not just being of the mind. It's like the body, or who you are in the world, how you're treating your body. So
it's multifaceted. So where's the best place for us to find you and follow along on your journey?
mentalkingmindfulness.com is pretty easy. And then you can also just text the letters MTM to 33777.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And Instagram, Men Talking Mindfulness. We're on X.
We're on all the socials.
On X, it's
except TikTok right now.
Yeah. I think we're still there. Right.
We're still there
X as well. You can find us. But we're on social as well. So you want some micro content to, thank you, Lauren. It's been great.
Amazing. Jon and Will, thank you for the incredible work you're doing. Thank you for coming on. This has been such a treat.
Yeah. Pleasure was all ours, believe me.
Thanks, Lauren.